Was so tipsy that he couldn't remember where he'd parked the hearse. It was eventually spotted by police 24 hours later, abandoned at the side of a river. Luckily, the body was still on board, and the driver and his rather patient passenger made it back to Warsaw in time for the funeral. Perhaps he should be looking for a different job. Well, I've spotted an advert for a housekeeping position with great perks. Free meals, private rooms, in return for a bit of light dusting and polishing, working for a lovely older lady, Queen Elizabeth. According to the job vacancy, the candidate will be hardworking and have a passion for delivering excellent service, as well as have an eye for detail. Come to think of it, that would suit me right down to the ground. Must go now, David. I've got an application form to fill in. See you at the palace.
Yay, milady, fantastic. Thank you very much, Fifi Harun. Now, this weekend is the Eurovision Song Contest. Which country is going to come out on top? But you know, hits can also be made on the sidelines. Take 1994 and the birth of the dance sensation Riverdance. They started with a performance during the interval of the contest in Ireland that year. Lucy Burns has been speaking with Jean Butler, one of the stars of the original show.
Dublin, April 1994, and the 39th Eurovision Song Contest is getting underway. It's an annual competition for pop music from all over Europe, from Finland to Portugal.
It was kind of like a circus. The glamour and the costumes and the makeup and hearing all the different languages and dramas and fights and cat fights and then singing and warming up and then all the Irish dancers like running around in between all these different European acts. I mean, I thought to myself from the dressing room, how am I going to get to the stage?
Dancer Jean Butler was the female lead in the interval performance, a showcase for traditional Irish dance with a modern twist.
I have to be really honest, I knew that what we were doing was special, but I just didn't know the force that it would have in terms of the cultural awakening that happened in Ireland for Irish dancing.
Jean Butler had been Irish dancing since she was a child in America's Long Island, although her first class at the Donny Golden School of Irish Dance had got off to a difficult start.
The class basically made about 25 4 to 8-year-olds stand in the line for 45 minutes with their arms at their sides until they moved. And once they moved, they were told to sit down. So I was one of the last in the line standing, and I got so tired and so bored that I eventually just moved my arms, and I was told to sit down. And I didn't sit down. I went straight out of the class, and I said to my mother, I really don't like this, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Traditional Irish dance has a very distinctive posture, back straight, arms held at the sides, with all the movement coming from the feet. It goes back to the 19th century, when cultural organisation the Gaelic League used dance as a way of asserting a certain kind of Irish national identity.
And the arms at one side really was in opposition to what I think a lot of people would say the Irish stereotype was, which would be unruly and ungovernable. So the idea of holding one's arms at one side purported an elegance and a civility that became an image of Irish nationalism.
And as the Irish diaspora spread, they took the dance with them.
My mother was born in Ireland, and she had to emigrate from her country and went to America when she was 17 years old. So my story is very similar to many other first and second generation Irish dancers, in that their parents were the ones that brought them to Irish dancing class as a way to keep culture in the family.
After that first false start, Jean gave Irish dance another try and discovered she didn't hate it after all.
I love to dance, and I love to Irish dance, so you know, it was wonderful to be accepted into a world with friends all over, and the one thing that united us was this form of dance.
Jean kept dancing through her teens, competing at national and then international levels and touring with folk band The Chieftains. In the early 90s, she moved to England to study drama at the University of Birmingham, where she was approached to take part in the Eurovision performance.
It was very simple. I got a phone call, and I said, yes, thank you very much, I'd like to be involved. And I hung up the pink phone, and I went into the sitting room where my flatmates were, and I explained what was happening, and I said, does anybody know what the Eurovision Song Contest is? And they all kind of fell around the place laughing, and they said, you can't do that, you can't take part in something like that, it's it's the funniest show ever.
In Britain, the Eurovision Song Contest isn't taken seriously because of its poppy aesthetic.
And I didn't have any reference point, and I said, well, I'm doing it, and here we go.
25 European pop acts performed at the competition, from Russia's Yudif with Eternal Wanderer to the German act Mikado with We're Having a Party. And then at the interval came Riverdance, a showcase for traditional culture by the host country, Ireland. It opened with a song by Celtic choir Anuna, and then Jean entered wearing a mysterious cloak and stepped forward into an elegant slip jig, leaping and whirling over the stage.
The stage was like an ice skating rink, and I think that was a blessing in many ways, because people always say, you know, what did it feel like when you finished? And I honestly say relief, because nobody fell. I remember an enormous amount of camera action on the stage as well, which was very distracting if you weren't used to that. I remember fearing that my dress would fall off because it was off the shoulder.
Jean was followed onto the stage by male solo dancer Michael Flatley, bursting with energy, tap shoes swirling as he beat out the rhythm. And finally, the soloists were joined by a whole row of dancers, male and female, arms pressed to their sides, feet flying. The show was a sensation.
I remember being held in Dublin really for about 4 or 5 days, where there was tons of press and interviews and excitement, and I remember being in the Davenport Hotel right in Dublin city centre, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, who's going to pay for this hotel bill? Like, I can't pay for this, I'm a student. But there seemed to be a great amount of interest and excitement.
And what was that like?
It was kind of bizarre. You know, I've been Irish dancing for a very long time, so for suddenly people who knew nothing about it to take an interest in it was very strange. We were made fun of for so long. So I think what the Eurovision Song Contest did was allow Ireland to appreciate what Irish dancing actually really is.
And what about your flatmates? Did they watch?
They did, of course they did. My flatmates, you know, they called me in the Davenport, and, you know, they thought it was great.
After the success of the Eurovision performance, the producers decided to develop a full-length Riverdance show, also starring Jean and Michael Flatley, which premiered the following year. Jean was in charge of choreographing her solo numbers.
In the politics of Irish dancing, I'm not a world champion. And the original lineup in the Eurovision Song Contest and the show, pretty much every single person on that stage was a world champion, except for myself. The idea to all of a sudden be put in charge of 15 world champions was slightly daunting.
Riverdance was an instant success, touring all over the world.
Touring with the show was really incredible, because everywhere we went, people really responded to the show. You know, it was this phenomenon in the truest sense of the word.
And touring with a group of energetic young dancers at the top of their game was also a lot of fun.
I just smile thinking about the nights that we had, the green room, the bar afterwards at the theater. So many friendships and so many love affairs and so many breakups and so many dramas. It was like going on the road with all your great mates.
Riverdance is still touring the world today, 21 years later. Jean Butler spent 2 years with the show, but left in January 1997.
Well, really, I felt that my time was done with the show. I think that I had gotten to a point where I had taken the role that I created as far as I could, and I wanted to make some changes. And the producers really wanted to keep the show as it was, because at this point it had really developed into a brand.
Jean started her own show, Dancing on Dangerous Ground, and later went back to university for a master's in contemporary dance performance.
Over the last 10 years, I've really been, working outside of the commercial Irish dance platform, and I've been working in a contemporary context. And my work has gotten very quiet and very intimate, and what I'm trying to figure out what all this Irish dancing has done to my body and what's really possible with that information. These are the things that kind of come up for me when I'm in the studio, and they are like ghosts of my past.